Nick, you've rushed from teaching this morning. You're going back to teaching, are you?
I'm going back to teaching at home, yes.
Yeah, and then you've got a rehearsal tonight for
I've got
Marla.
a rehearsal, yes. It's a busy week, Mark.
It's a very busy week, and I have the cheek to turn up and expect you
No,
to talk about
it's
your
all,
life.
It's all good. It's all good. It's just, weeks when we have orchestra rehearsals every night, things tend to get a bit chaotic. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm trying to do a few other things at the moment as well, like annoying things like getting my cell phone fixed.
Okay. All right. That's
That's just a side issue.
yeah. That's. I can't help with that.
No.
But can we talk about your early musical memories? How did it all start for you? Was it the saxophone? Was it the oboe? Was it jazz? Was it classical?
All good questions. So my early music experiences, I suppose, go right back to when I was very young, babies like time, like when I was before the age of 2, really, with my mother singing to me and singing me to sleep. And so all of the songs that she sang, I remember they're just like, bells in my head. They just ring. And I can hear her voice whenever I think about it. Of course,
Yes.
as one always can hear one's parents' voices
Yeah.
probably, but particularly hers. She had a lovely singing voice, and it was her way of communicating with me. I felt like
Yes.
and so that was the start.
Did your mum realise that you were a musical person, little baby?
I think she knew that I was keen on music. Yeah, for sure.
Because mums are good at things like that, aren't they?
They're pretty perceptive.
Yes.
Yes. So yes, I suppose I listened intently. Maybe that's a sign, And then then she had a student who was teaching the guitar, playing the guitar and teaching, and she asked him to give me some lessons, and I really enjoyed that I actually did some piano lessons before that, but I forget about that because they weren't so significant for me, I suppose.
Yes, but the guitar was.
The guitar was, yes. The
Yes.
guitar really hooked me, and I loved being able to play chords and sing at the same time, and make music with my teacher. And he taught me a lot of, we got into Stevie Wonder songs and that sort of thing, which really engaged me. And I learnt a lot of chords, and but I think also I went to church at that time very regularly, and I sang hymns, and then when I went to high school, public school in England, I sang in the choir, I sang in the motet choir. I was a music scholar, so I had to be.
So was this a private school?
It was yes.
Yeah.
I mean, English private.
Yes,
school
yes,
called a
public school.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
you know what
right.
I mean?
Yes, yes.
One of those. It didn't have a particularly great reputation actually as a school, but musically I got involved with everything.
Yes.
I was performing
Because you had to, because you were a music scholar.
Partly because I had to.
But then, of course, you wanted to.
I suppose I didn't mind.
Yes.
So I was doing a lot of playing. I played in concerts that they had every week. I was playing in the orchestra. I was singing in the choir.
So did you take up the oboe to help get the scholarship?
Yes, I started the oboe when I was 11. Yep, and I had private lessons with a lady who'd never taught the oboe before. So that was interesting.
So looking back, do you think she did a good job?
It's always an interesting question. I have very fond memories of my early lessons with Margaret Bell, and she was a wonderful person. She's from Yorkshire. She was pretty tough, and she made me cry a few times. I remember, I think because I couldn't do something she was asking me to do. But I think I heard the oboe the way I think it should sound, like in a singing. She was able to sing with the instrument.
So she played the oboe.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
She also was a viola player, interestingly. Right. But she was a lovely person, and we had a good relationship.
Yes.
And she got me involved with playing shows.
So can I just go back to this thing of you crying? Did she make you cry, or did you cry because you were upset with yourself?
Yes, probably I was upset that I couldn't do something she wanted me desperately to be able to do.
Yes. I just want to clear her name.
Yeah, I don't spend too much time thinking about that. But
yes.
Because occasionally I have made my own students cry, and I think, how did that happen?
Yes.
And it's strange sometimes you hit a nerve with people, but that's why you really need to know your students a little bit before you sort of challenge them at any level.
Yes.
I'm fairly soft as a teacher, but for people who I know can do well, I tend to toughen up.
Yes.
And I think it's good to set the standards, isn't it? That's what we try and do as teachers.
Yes.
But Yeah, so those early oboe experiences of lessons were really good, and I did have some good success at exams. And I remember one particular piece that I used to play, which people used to love me playing for some reason. It was called "Longing for Summer," um, and I remember it was quite a difficult sort of piece. It just had sort of slow-moving quavers in it, but it was an expressive sort of piece, and you were able to put some feeling into it. I remember thinking, oh, I can actually do this. So yeah, I don't know. I think oboe's a funny instrument because it is really challenging to learn.
Yes, I mean, people say they love the sound of the oboe, but actually the sound of most young oboists, inexperienced oboists, is not a sound.
Disappointing.
It's just, you sometimes want to cross the road, don't you?
Yes, you want to get away from it. But no, I think, yeah, it can be it's a great instrument, but it is tough at the beginning. I think people have got to get over certain hurdles, and they have to face up to that reality that actually all you've got is this funny little reeds, squawky thing, and you have to stick it in this tube and make some sort of glorious sound with it. But it's actually, harder than it looks in a way.
Best you don't know when you first start.
Well, it is in a way.
Yeah. So you finished school. You've had a lot of experiences there, and what was next?
Then I had the opportunity to go and study in Paris. So it's pretty special actually. I had lessons with John Williams from the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra. And I have to make mention of him because he was an inspirational teacher for me. And he suggested that I maybe went to the Royal College of Music, tried for that, but before that maybe go and study abroad. So, and he had some connections with Pierre Pielot in Paris. And so I went to have some lessons with Pielot, and it was a dream really. I mean, I left school, I'd led a disciplined sort of life where everything was like at 9:30 you're doing this, and at 10 o'clock you got this, and so all of a sudden going to live in Paris, and all I had was one oboe lesson a week. That was about it. And for the rest of the time, guess what? I had a great time,
Yes.
So yeah, and it was, as I say, it was just incredible being in a city which I didn't know and needed to explore, and getting out and about. And I walked everywhere, I remember, and sort of looked on tourist maps and where am I going next? Oh, let's go to the Sacré-Cœur, up the Eiffel Tower, down the Champs-Élysées, and all this stuff.
Yes.
It's just a great experience. And I went to a church there where I met a lot of Australians and New Zealanders and Americans and Canadians. So we didn't speak much French at the church, but Pielot didn't speak any French, so I had to understand French. Luckily I did speak.
You mean he didn't speak any
He
English?
didn't speak any English, right?
Yes.
Sorry. So
yes.
all the lessons were in French, and so that was a good, part of my education too.
Yes. And tell me about his lessons, because he was one of the huge names of the oboe world.
He was definitely a big star of the oboe. Yes, I had lessons at his house in Rue Abel Ferry, I remember, in Port Saint Cloud. And he smoked a cigarette in my lessons with him. I remember thinking, oh, really? Yep, he could actually play the oboe with a cigarette just here and smoke sort of pouring off it. Anyway, that was one significant thing. But he did make me work hard. He made me work with my technique. And he got me to play all these really difficult studies and exercises. So I did work at those in my own time. And it definitely pushed me. So he really challenged my ability to play fast and tongue fast. And definitely the emphasis was on technique. But he also had a beautiful sound himself. And that comes across in his recordings. Amazing, sort of bell-like vibrato.
Yes.
Which is out of fashion now, I have to say.
Yes.
But he had a lovely, beautiful singing sort of sound.
Do you think that will come back, that style of playing?
I don't know. I think it's there with. It was just very overt, his way of playing.
Yes.
Very. I don't know. Just such the emphasis on the beauty of sound, which is hugely important, of course.
Yes.
But a very fast singing vibrato, very sort of
Yes.
regular vibrato. I think nowadays we tend to try not to do that so much. And there's the English school of playing and the French school, and there's all these different schools of oboe playing. I don't know whether you have the same with the clarinet. But
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, it's interesting because in previous times there was huge differences, but with international travel and everything else, the style of playing has become much more internationalized. It's more blurred, which is sort of which is sad in some ways. So, can I ask you, did you go to France with a French oboe, or did you have a English Howarth oboe? Because it's quite an
interesting question, Mark. A good question. I think I had a cabard, which is French.
Yes.
Which is like
Okay.
a lorry.
Yes.
And so at that time I can't remember when I changed my oboe. I think it was after that, probably. I changed to a Howth. But as you say, yes, they tend to be a little bit, you have to play on a French oboe if you want to play. You know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so there's that thing. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure I had a capo at that stage.
Yes, so that would have been okay.
That was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you then went back to England to study at the Royal College?
Then I went to the college for 4 years.
And who were you studying with there?
Sidney Sutcliffe.
Right, a name to be reckoned.
Gentleman of,
yes.
of the, you know.
So tell me about Sidney, because he was a name on lots of records that I listened to. Yes.
Sure. I mean, again, he's a wonderful guy. Just such a warm-hearted and humorous individual. He really was great fun to be with. I think he taught me well. I think in a way he was almost at the end of his career. So he was always telling me stories about conductors, Celobadaci, you know, and Klemperer and all these sort of old conductors from his time in the Philharmonia in the 1960s. And whilst that was, you know, interesting enough, I just thought, okay, well, I'll lock that one away.
Yes.
But you know, I knew that he had taught some pretty amazing oboe players as well. He had a string of students who'd done very well. Malcolm Missiter was amongst them, I remember. But I think, I don't know, I must have learnt a lot of music from him. I covered a lot of repertoire with Jock, and he was a lot of fun to be with.
Yes.
I don't know that he presented me with the absolute opportunities to go and play in this and that orchestra. Previously, John Williams had actually enabled me to go and play with the Bournemouth Symphony a couple of times, and I actually recorded Mahler's 10th Symphony, the first recording by the Derek Cook version, first CD that was ever made almost. I think it was 1979 or 1980
Right.
or something.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's going back.
So there's nothing like when a teacher does create those opportunities.
For sure. Oh,
Yes.
it's an incredible thing to be able to do. Yeah, and that stayed with me.
Mm.
And one of the first times I played with the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, that was actually with Simon Rattle, that recording. And then I had other opportunities to play Heldenleben, and Nicholas Braithwaite was the conductor. So, and he remembers that. So every time I see Nicholas Braithwaite, we always have a sort of nice catch up.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
So you finished at college, and were you starting to get work on?
Yes, I got work. I suppose I was working with the Royal Shakespeare Company Wind Band at the end of that time, and that was a formative experience. I was basically playing in a small group with about 10 other people. They were completely different age to me, and I felt completely out of my depth in a way. But I mean, musically, it was relatively challenging. Most of all, you had to play the same music every night, and it was like, here we go again, you know. And so you had to be ready. I was playing cor anglais and oboe in that. The music was okay, and it was good pay and that sort of thing. It was a regular income. I also played with the wind quintet, which I formed at college, and that was a really good, fun thing to do. And we got work with Live Music Now, which was Yehudi Menuhin's sort of organisation, which puts musicians into different places where people don't normally hear live music, like prisons, special schools, hospitals, and all this sort of thing. So that was great, and I really loved playing, you know, wind quintet music with my mates, and we formed a very, very close bond, really. And beyond that, I had an oboe trio as well, and that's actually where I met my first wife, Catherine.
Yes.
And we
Kiwi.
Yeah, she was Kiwi. That is actually why I'm here.
Yes.
So I have to recognise that fact. But yeah, so we did a lot of oboe trios, and we toured around England and did interesting programs with poetry as well.
Yes.
So, but that was also very good musically, I think, for me. Yeah. Chamber music is always, like, I feel, it's the thing that stretches you most in some ways.
Yes.
And it's interesting that my daughter has gone into, you know, chamber music full
Yes.
time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide to come back? Well, for you to come to New Zealand?
Yeah, it was a funny decision in a way. I think a lot of people didn't really understand why we wanted to come to New Zealand. Well, what happened was my wife's brother had a wedding in Wanaka, and we came back for the wedding, and we stayed in Wanaka for 3 weeks, and we had a wonderful time there. As you know, it's surrounded by beautiful mountains and lakes, and it's just amazing. We went back to London, and
it was raining.
And it was raining. Yeah, it was great. Day after day.
There was a
after day
tube
after
strike.
day. Yeah, it was sort of, oh, here we go. This is reality, and it was a bit depressing, really.
Yes.
So we just thought, well, if we don't make this big move now, we perhaps never will in our lives. So we took the huge decision to move to New Zealand. But we had very little to go on here. It's not like we were coming to jobs or anything.
No.
So we did write to schools in Central Otago. We thought, how about living in Central Otago? So it was funny though, because each of us looked at each other after a few weeks back in London and said, hey, how about, making the change? But the odd thing about that is that 10 years before that, we'd come to New Zealand and we'd driven through Cromwell, which was the place where we chose to live. And we looked at each other and said, wow, this place is like a ghost town. Where is everybody? And the irony is, here we go, we went back and lived in Cromwell for, 5 years before we came to live in Dunedin. So, and I must admit, that was an interesting challenge living in Cromwell.
I would think so.
It's a small population.
Yes.
5,000 people, So everybody knows everybody else. It's a small place.
So it would have been a very, I would think, almost impossible situation.
I mean, musically, anything that happened, you basically made it yourself.
Yes.
So you were working in a bit of a vacuum. But it was a good opportunity because you faced up to the reality of, okay, here we are. If we don't do something, nothing much is going to happen. So we helped to set up an orchestra in Alexandria at that time, a youth orchestra. We did concerts, and Catherine in particular organised these soirees, and they were in Cromwell in the old. It's an art gallery now. It was one of the old Cromwell buildings, and so rather distinguished building. And we had an artist would exhibit their work, and we had a music concert. I remember Martin Risley came once and did a concert for us, which was terrific. And so it was like a musical evening, and then we provided some food and drink as well. So it was a really nice way of celebrating, life and music. And it made a sort of an impact on the people of Cromwell. It definitely,
I'm sure it would.
Sort of helped to.
But tell me, did you and Catherine sort of start looking at your A to Z of London and thinking, or had you made that break?
We made the break, and we knew that we had to fully embrace that decision, really.
Yes.
Because it's such a big decision. You shift all your things to another country, and then you go, right, where to from? We have to start again.
Yes.
So, we were happy with that decision. I think that Cromwell is a difficult place to live because of the smaller population. We've been used to a big city life. It's completely different. And a different country as well, and a different culture. So we were getting used to a lot of new things coming over here. It wasn't like we made the decision completely blind, because we knew, Catherine was from New Zealand anyway,
yes.
and we knew roughly what we were coming to. But yeah, it wasn't easy. But we forged a life in Cromwell when we had children. Of course, that's a big distraction. So they kept us busy. I was doing itinerant teaching. I got a job at the high school there teaching music. I'd never taught classroom music before, so suddenly to be faced with, you can imagine, 25, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds. Oh my gosh, yeah. So I had to learn fast, Mark. It was tough.
Yes.
That was tough. Yeah.
And then the move came to opportunity in Dunedin.
Yeah, we looked at schools and we thought, I think maybe it'd be better to be in Dunedin for schooling for the kids. And so that was really the decision we made, partly for them, but also it meant we could play in the orchestra more easily. And we'd already played in the DSO. When we lived in Cromwell, we'd come down for the week sometimes, or one of us or both of us, and work with the orchestra. So, we'd had a sort of open door there, which was nice. And I must admit, there was a few oboe players in the orchestra who were very, very, very kind, and they went, oh, well, you've come from London, you're obviously experienced, you play in the orchestra and we'll step aside.
Well, that's pretty extraordinary.
Well, it is.
It doesn't always work like that at all.
No, so, I'm very indebted to Ian Morrison for doing that.
Yes.
He was playing principal oboe. He's a fine player too.
Yes.
But he very graciously sort of went, clearly you've done a lot more playing than me, you can step up. So. But we were very fortunate, I think, in a way, for that to happen. But it did mean we had opportunities to play in the DSO.
And you got a position as an itinerant here?
Yes, that was after I had taught in high school. So I went through, I taught at Otago Girls. I was head of music there for 2 years. And then I went to Logan Park for a year. And after that, John Dodd then became head of music there. And then I applied for the itinerant job, and I got that. And I've been there ever since. So that's...
So when you got that job, was it cause for celebration?
Actually, yes.
Yeah.
Most music teachers, classroom teachers, will understand me when I say yes, because it finally meant an end to the dreaded paperwork and the assessments and the nightmare of paperwork here, which is always a challenge for me. And I don't think, I enjoyed the student contact in the classroom, but all the other administrational things was something I didn't relish, didn't enjoy. I think it's very tough as a classroom music teacher that part of your head is in the sort of classroom area, and then the other one is in the performance area. Oh, we want you to play at this event that we're doing next, in 2 weeks' time. Could you have a group to come and play? So you get this pressure all the time, and I think being a music teacher is a pretty rotten situation to be in, actually. So I was very happy when I got the job of itinerant teacher, because I was suddenly more familiar territory for me.
So at that point, you had to teach all the woodwinds. Had you been doing that beforehand, or?
Yes, pretty much. I had been. So, suddenly it meant, you have to teach, oboe, flute, clarinet, bassoon, saxophone. What have I left out? Oboe. So everybody knows there aren't that many oboe students around, but mostly you'd have to do, clarinet and saxophone for sure.
Yes.
And so that became my focus.
And did you enjoy?
Yeah, I did. I immediately started enjoying doing all of that right from the beginning. I had actually had a few doors open for me when Jim Mackay took some time off in 1997 and 98, and Judy Russell took some time off, so I was able to actually get to know some of the music teachers here, which was a good opportunity. So I wasn't completely unfamiliar, which is nice. So I had an introduction to some of the teachers, and so I felt like a familiar face, which was good. But no, I've enjoyed the itinerant job ever since.
So tell me about the saxophone. When did the saxophone start sort of seriously for you? Because I feel that you have a real passion for the saxophone.
I do. Well, when I was 30, we had an opportunity to buy an instrument, and I said, well, I'd like to get an alto sax. And I'd always enjoyed listening to jazz. I remember my first experience of listening to jazz was like the Joe Loss Orchestra, playing big band stuff, Ellington, Basie, all that. So I was a little bit familiar with that, and then the bossa novas was something I enjoyed. I had a record of bossa novas, and I listened to that. I learnt all those tunes actually before I played them. But then come time to as I say, we got this money, and so I got a saxophone. I had learnt saxophone at school, by the way.
Okay.
I didn't say that. So I did bassoon at school and saxophone lessons with my military band music teacher. So he was a great dude. He was actually a clarinetist, and he always played the clarinet with me. So I have memories of him, me playing the oboe, these duets, and him playing clarinet. Yes. Then I did bassoon, and he played clarinet. So it was always But actually, he was very good. He taught me a lot of scales and technique. He actually pushed me along in that sense. And saxophone. Finally, I thought, I can actually. And I picked up the saxophone at that point, age 30, and went, whoa, this is like, I can play this.
Yes.
It just seemed so easy after the struggles of the oboe.
It's a very different voicing, isn't it?
So different, yeah.
Yes.
Much freer.
Yes.
And you have this sort of sound that's just like there.
Yes.
Like you don't create it. It's like it exists already almost. So, I mean, it's not to decrease,
No, but I'm
totally. Has its challenges.
I mean, I say in the early stages, it has to be about the easiest instrument out, doesn't it?
I do tell people it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
And
it gets harder though, doesn't it?
I mean, I think it gets harder to play really well, and that's the secret. So yes, but it's just got a completely different feel from the oboe for me. And it's different to the flute as well, and I still enjoy the flute. So when I had to do the show recently at the Jersey Boys, I was playing oboe, flute, clarinet, and alto, one after another, in quick succession.
Yes.
So that's a challenge.
It's quite a thrill doing something like that, isn't it?
It is, because I love the Frankie Valli songs.
Yes.
I love them all. So it was actually good fun.
Yes.
Yep.
And then let's just talk briefly about your underachieving children.
Well then, yes.
They won't be watching this. So did you start Todd off on the bassoon?
Yes. Yep. It's quite a good story really, because the first time Todd heard the bassoon, it was played by the then principal bassoon player of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, John Cran. you know.
Yes.
And anyway, John was invited, I think, by the DSO to come and do some chamber music. So we're doing the Mozart Grand Partita, a piece you know rather well.
Yes.
And it was a super experience. It was actually with Nick Braithwaite. Anyway, John was playing principal bassoon, and it was just lovely to meet him. Such a great guy who was fun to be with. I loved his playing. And we invited him around one night just for fun. So we came round to our house and got his bassoon out. And
This is such a wonderful story. I don't know this. I mean, I know John so well.
right.
And
Well,
he would have never known that Todd would end up sitting in his seat in the Sydney Symphony
I
Orchestra.
think that's the thing. So that's sort of curious. Anyway, so Todd was obviously taken by the bassoon, and we made the decision to buy a mini bassoon from Howarth's, and so we purchased quite an expensive instrument.
Very expensive, yes. Very expensive.
Anyway, there's risks involved with all things in life, but you know, it wasn't that big. But anyway, so the good thing is that the reeds are the same size. There's a full-size bassoon reed, even on a mini bassoon, which is intriguing because that's not normally the case with most of these kinder instruments.
No.
So anyway, Todd started then at 5, and he actually enjoyed it, and he practiced, and he worked hard. I mean, Bryony was already, doing violin and having lessons regularly, so music was everywhere really in our house. But Todd did well. He kept playing, and his playing improved gradually, just slowly, steadily. He didn't do anything really major in Dunedin, I don't think. But I just remember him beating a girl in a competition who was 16 years old, and Todd was 9. And Todd went up, played this piece just perfectly, notes perfect, beautiful tone, and he beat this girl. I would not say who it was, but anyway, a viola player it was. And I just thought, wow, that was amazing. How did you do that? But the other thing that happened with Todd, and I think this is significant. Sorry, don't mind.
No, it's
go
fascinating.
Sideways slightly. I did a lot of recordings at that stage when the kids were growing up, and they used to come along to my jazz rehearsals in my jazz band, and we were doing Latin jazz at the time, and he enjoyed that. Todd really connected with that music, and sometime later I'd given him a recording or something of what we'd made, and he said every night he would listen to this recording, and he learned all of the improvised solos that I had done. He learned them note for note. And when I met him it was sort of a year later or something, we were listening to the CD and he was singing along. He was singing every note that I played. That was all improvised, He'd learned all these solos. And I just thought, wow, how did that happen? And I just thought, you've got something going on there. Yep.
Yeah.
So he had an ear, for things,
Yes.
rhythm, music, for melody, and clearly there was something going on. Anyway, he went on to prove that, and a few years later he started practicing the bassoon crazily when he was at Burnside, and they won that chamber music competition that year with Selena Fisher and Hugh,
Yes.
playing the flute. They did that trio, and I knew then that something was going on, and that I think Todd had chosen, or the bassoon had chosen Todd or something, but there was some synergy between them, and so there was a big moment when they won that competition, because I listened going, whoa, that's phenomenal, and they played beautifully, It was an unusual piece, Gensmer. Have you ever heard of Gensmer?
No.
So, not a very well-known composer, but it was rather a good piece. It was a superb choice for them because they were able to show off their ability as an ensemble and individually. So, it was a turning point, I thought, in Todd's career, and he went on to do amazing things. Yeah.
So he's principal bassoon in the Sydney Symphony, but he's played in lots of top orchestras.
He's done all sorts of things.
Didn't he just do the London Symphony Orchestra tour?
Of Australia.
Yes.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
as
he gets
principal
invited
bassoon.
to do that. Yeah. So
Yes.
I mean, he's fortunate. I think he's played his cards quite well somehow in the professional world. I think he's himself. He's quite authentic. I don't think he tries to be anybody else. I mean, when he went to London to study, that was a big thing for a young guy to do, and he went, I think, at age 18 to do undergrad at the Royal College. But the year before that, my wife Megan had breast cancer. We were going to London, going to the UK. We couldn't go, and he was coming with us at the time. But we said, maybe he should just go by himself. And so he did, and he flew to London by himself. And he had to navigate his way around London. and meet all these people, you know, bassoon players, professionals here and there, go to Covent Garden and do all this. And he managed that really well. And suddenly it was the making of his confidence in himself, really. So he began to, you know, gain some kudos, I suppose, around the place. This bassoon player from New Zealand, what's he doing here? It's a bit cheeky, really. But, you know, clearly he had an impact at college, and they wrote this lovely letter saying this is one of the best auditions we've heard from a wind player, you know, in the last 10 years. So it impressed them, and clearly he could play bassoon and do things. And it was partly the experience he'd had in this country, actually, to be honest, in the Christchurch Symphony and the NZSO. To have those opportunities before you leave and go and study elsewhere it sets you up.
I think New Zealand does that very well.
Oh, it's extraordinary.
It certainly has done in the past.
Yeah, and that we can provide those opportunities for young players, you know. It's pretty special. You could never do that in the UK. It just wouldn't happen. You couldn't just get an experience very easily, anyway, with, you know, a pro orchestra, and then, you know, for that to happen.
Well, the famous story, do you know the New Zealand trumpeter way before your time, Gordon Webb? Have you heard that name? Well, anyway, Gordon grew up somewhere in New Zealand, and when he was still in short pants, could play the trumpet so well, he was in the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, wearing short pants.
Right.
And he went to London, and on the way he stopped off in South Africa and ended up as principal trumpet in the Johannesburg Orchestra.
Oh, wow.
I think he was just out of short pants, and within no time he was principal in the London Philharmonic Orchestra.
Right.
And I use that example of what it's because he had that experience.
Yeah.
At such a young age.
Yeah.
When they know no fear whatsoever.
That's part of it, isn't it? Yeah. It's just like grabbing that opportunity.
But let's talk about Bryony.
Yeah. How can we not talk about Bryony? Yeah, she's done fantastically well. Where do you want me to start?
Well, when did her musical talent
So we
shine?
took her to Suzuki lessons at age 4 in Alexandra. It was very fortunate that there was this fully trained Australian Suzuki teacher in Alexandra. Roseanne Ford, a wonderful person, and Bryony just struck up this lovely relationship with her. You know, they just connected somehow. I mean, Bryony does this with adults. She's very gregarious and very easy to get to know, I think. But so she had this great relationship, and I think it inspired her clearly, you know, to want to do well. And she's always been a great pleaser. So she just thrived. I think she just flourished right from the beginning, and she always loved performing. She always loved singing too, and that was one of her things. And of course, she went on to study voice at Canterbury, and then she had to make a decision about, do I do viola or... But anyway, she went on to viola so she did continue with violin right until she was about 11 or 12, and then she took up the viola. But I think she was savvy. She knew the sound of the instruments, but she loved the deeper sounds. And I think she also realized there was a lot of violinists out there. And maybe it was a wise move to go on to viola. Not just because of the fact that there were a lot of violinists, but, you know, because she did like the deeper sound of the viola. But that somehow it did sort of resonate, if that's the right word. It was a good decision for her. And she stuck with it. And again, she had similar experience to Todd in that, but she made it before Todd, really. So chamber music wise, her group won the national competition 3 times, I think, at least twice. She won with an octet first, and then she had a quartet, the Bedrich Quartet, which I think Selena Fisher played in. And that was a really amazing group. They played Smetana, and they won. And I think those formative experiences are hugely important, you know. They do set people up, and they give you a sense of confidence that we can do this. And obviously chamber music grabbed her at that stage, and I suppose the ground was set from there, really. Anyway, I mean, she's gone on and she went to Juilliard to study in America for 4 years, and she embraced everything there. She tried to do everything. She taught at the junior college there. She did composition. She did singing as well, and she wrote a piece where she's actually singing in it and playing the viola at the same time. But she made the most of her opportunities there. She got to play with a very good Baroque group. I forget the name of it, something East. Anyway, a very good Baroque music group. And so after that, Todd, I think, managed to persuade her that she should come back to England, back to Europe. So she did. She applied for the college and she got a place and a scholarship. And she went there and met lots of other people, did very well at the college. I don't think the group, I think her quartet formed after she left, but it was through college people. And she was asked by the Marmon Quartet to join them. And at that stage, there were 2 different players in it. So the group is actually now quite different. So it is still Johannes, who's the leader, Johannes Marmon, and Bryony. And then there are now 2 new players as well. So the other 2 players, there were a few issues, and the groups change like that. And it's difficult, you never know what's going to happen. But they're very well established now. They won 2 major international competitions, which was kind of extraordinary, but they just worked really, really hard and had enough self-belief to really commit to the work. And they worked I just know how hard they worked. I listened to some of the rounds sort of in the middle of the night at 1 a.m. watching the videos. So they're live streamed, you see, these competitions, So it was rather exciting to be able to do that. But I think one of them was a joint first. One of them was in Bordeaux, and the other one was in Canada, in Banff. And so they now have connections with these places. And the group, now the Marmon Quartet, goes to Dallas regularly. They go to Germany regularly. And they're practically now doing the world tour that they were going to do when COVID struck in 2020.
But Bryony's also just been appointed.
Oh, and she's just been appointed full professor at the Royal College of Music, which is amazing, yes. And she did do teaching at college before. She was sort of teaching with her teacher, sort of associate teaching, if you like. So now to be appointed full time it's a great thing to be able to do. And I think she's loving it. She struggles to get the teaching done because she's so busy touring with the quartet. But whenever she's back in London, she's there at college and catching up with students.
A great Kiwi story.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
They've done very well. The kids, I'm really proud of them both.
So Nick, thank you for giving up your time on such a busy day. And I hope you enjoy your teaching this afternoon.
I will, Mark. Thank you. It's been good talking to you.